All right, Kevin, back with you for another episode of the $1 Million Relationships Podcast. And today I am here with Joey Havens. Joey, welcome. It's so awesome to have you here today.
Thank you, Kevin. I'll tell you, I'm very, very excited to be with you, and I certainly appreciate and very grateful for this opportunity.
Well, the feeling is 100% mutual, Joey, and I'll tell you, I want to give a shout out to Andrew Ailman and the team over at Podcast Guests. I'm on their email list. I don't even remember, now ever since I've been a podcast host, I probably opted in for it at some point, but I get 2 emails from them every week with a handful of about, I don't know, they probably highlight 10 to 15 people that are potential podcast guests that I just kind of peruse those twice a week and look and see like, oh, who looks like an interesting person? And then I get to reach out to them as I reached out to you and just say, hey, I'd love to interview you for my podcast. And you responded to that, or somebody on your team did, Joey. And here we are. And I'll tell you, just in the few minutes that you and I have been talking before we hit the record button, what a testament to the power of relationships, because you and we just started communicating and talking and getting like we've known each other for years,
Yeah, I mean, very, very natural.
Yeah, totally. And that is, yeah, like I said, testament to the power of relationships for sure. So what I'd like to do is just kind of start off by turning it over to you to share, what you feel led to share about, about the work that you do, about the impact that you're making in this world, what you do, who you serve, what inspires you most about the work you do. And we'll just start there and set a little context.
You're saying that to an introvert, so that may be difficult.
Joey, it's just me and you, okay?
Be prepared. Be prepared to ask some questions. But let me start with what I think God has given me as my life's purpose.
Okay, all right.
And I get joy from seeing people, helping them see and realize their full potential. Mm-hmm. When I'm doing something that helps somebody else really reach out there for their full potential, that's what I get excited about. And I have shared that for years with people. And I grew up in rural North Mississippi, and we weren't members of the country club. I was mowing grass and doing things like that, so we'd have jeans to wear. And it taught me a work ethic that has been very valuable to me. And I was raised by 2 wonderful Christian parents, and they taught me how important it was to walk with faith and to express love and caring to other people. And I know that has had a big impact on me throughout my life. But I went to Ole Miss, I'm still a raving Ole Miss fan. I love SEC football and baseball and basketball. And I know that probably irritates a few listeners already because they're thinking Big Ten and so ACC and everything else. But love college sports. So that's one of the things that I truly love. But I graduated out of Ole Miss, took a job with what was then called the Big Eight. I'm a CPA by trade, and so it's called the Big Four now. But I went to work for Arthur Andersen in Houston, Texas, and stayed out there a while and decided I wanted to move back to Mississippi and raise a family, and did that. And I got hooked up all the way back in 1984 with Horn. It was known as Horn CPA Group back then. It's Horn LLP. And I am completing my 39th year of service with the firm this year. So it's been a long and fruitful and wonderful and short in many ways career. I'll be retiring in January. And as part of my journey, and part of the things I learned is I became the managing partner of the firm And we're now a top 25 firm in the country. We were around 55th, top 100, around 55th when I became the managing partner back in 2012. And this year, we became in the top 25. So we've just had tremendous organic growth, and all of it has been a result of us really being focused on honoring God by loving and caring for our people and having a people first culture. And so that's led me in the last couple of years to write the book, Leading with Significance, and it'll be released in June 6th of this year. You can pre-order it on Amazon now, but that's what I've been busy doing the last 2 years. And it's about a journey of moving from a good culture, a company that had a really good culture, had all the street creds in the world. People would say, hey, you ought to go to work for that Horn Group. That's a great group of people. But when we stopped and really peeled the onion back, we saw that our good culture really wasn't good enough to carry us forward, and we weren't getting exponential growth. We weren't getting the wow experiences that we wanted with our clients. And so we went to work on our culture, and it has just been an amazing ride since we really got focused on people.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. So for you, Joey, helping bring out people's greatest potential in them, what does that look like? How have you been going about doing that? Do you have courses? Do you go and speak? What does that look like in your world?
Yeah, it's obviously a lot of different things. I think for leaders in general, it's caring enough to learn who Kevin is. It's caring enough to learn what Kevin's aspirations are. It's caring enough to give Kevin candid feedback on what his strengths are and how you can play to them, and what are your constraints, and what are some things I've learned to get around constraints like that, and really be invested as a sponsor or an advocate or a coach. That's on the more personal level, and that's really on the relationship side. That's when people they get that sense of belonging, and they say, you know what, I know Joey cares for me. When he tells me I need to work on this, they think about it in a different light. And then it's the conversations around, look, here's what's in front. A lot of people can't see what's possible. I think about, Apple, and talking about, if we had asked people what they wanted in a phone, they never would have talked about the iPhone,
No.
Henry Ford about the car. If we'd asked people what they wanted, they said a faster horse.
That's right.
And so it's the same thing in all our lives. We underestimate what we really can do and what our potential is. So part of it's having what I call what's possible conversations.
Yeah.
And then the last thing I'll mention right now is I love teaching young professionals. I love teaching young leaders, people getting out there. And so I've taught a presentation for a number of years, many years, called ABCs to Outstanding.
Okay.
I've now put that in an ebook. But the ABCs to Outstanding, there's three critical things: attitude, maintaining control of your attitude. B is for better focus, because most of us show up and we're not really focused. So better focus. And the third thing, and it's more prevalent than ever, I've created this 20 years ago. Today is more relevant than ever before, and that's constant learning. We live in an exponential world. It's not going to slow down. Do you think we're going to go from 5G back to 3G, back to 1G? No, it's going to keep going fast. And what that means is that we have to learn, unlearn, and relearn. It happens with your phone all the time. You get that notice, got to have an update. You want it at 2 a.m.? I always select 2 a.m. But the next morning, there's something quirky about that phone, that I have to unlearn and relearn something else. And that's just a small example. But man, when you're in business and when you're working with your team, they're having to do that every day with technology and with tools and products. And you also want the power of them saying, hey, look what I found out there.
Yeah.
And so all of that is speeding up. So the ABCs to outstanding: attitude, better focus, constant learning. You work on those three things, I promise you, you will not be average anymore.
Yeah. Good.
Who wants to be average, Kevin?
I know, right? And who wants to go backwards anyways? You know, I mean, I got a kick out of you said, you know, get a notice from the company, go, you know what, we're going to go back to 3G and 1G. Who wants to do that?
We're only going to have 2 apps. You got to pick which one you want to use.
That's right. Okay, well, I really appreciate you sharing all that, Joey. So what I want to do is, now that we've got a little bit of context set and listeners have a little bit of an idea of who Joey is and what Joey's all about, I'm going to reiterate the question for the benefit of the listeners. So, have you ever been introduced to a person or persons that completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person or persons? And Joey, I am just really excited to hear your story and your experience around this topic of relationships.
Yeah, you know, when you sent me that question, I really reflected on it, and it's such a great, powerful question.
Yeah.
It did a couple of different things for me.
Okay.
It made me reflect. You know, I actually, there's some people that I need to thank a little more often. You know, it's a very powerful question. And the other thing that I believe in, by the way, and I teach all the time, is that none of us get to where we are today without the help of others. We stand on the shoulders of others. If I'm giving a presentation that is honoring me in any kind of way, I mean, I always think about and sometimes share about the turtle on a fence post. If you see a turtle on a fence post, how do you think he got there? He didn't climb that fence. Somebody put that turtle up there. And so the one thing I'd say is my answer is going to be yes and no, because there's so many people that have impacted me and my journey and have had such a lasting impact. And I'm going to start with the first day of my life when I met my dad. I was one of those that was blessed with a dad that is one of the finest Christian men I have ever met in my life. And his living that day in and day out has had just an amazing effect on me as a person, and certainly affected my relationship with God. And so, you know, I got to say, on day one of my life, I met a man I had no idea how impactful he would be. Mm-hmm. And then as I started going up through school and thinking about some of that. Now I've got some history, so and I needed a lot of help, Kevin. So I got quite a few names here, but I'll go through them kind of quickly, and then when you visit on any of them you want to visit.
Okay.
The next name that really came to me is Mrs. Abson.
Okay.
And Mrs. Abson was my history teacher in the 6th grade. She was a Black teacher. She was the first Black teacher I'd ever had. They had just integrated the schools. And she had such a phenomenal impact on me and understanding more about life. And she taught me to expect more out of myself. I kept wanting to take the shortcuts. And Mrs. Abson, she'd call me up after class and she would say, Joey, you are better than this. You know, and man, it really stuck me. She showed how much she cared, and it made a lot of difference. Then the next name that really came to me was Mrs. Trawick. And Mrs. Trawick was a high school teacher that taught me math, and she busted my butt over and over in math class. She was really the first teacher that, man, if I didn't study, and I mean spend a little time on it, which, you know, we find out when we get to college we needed to learn how to do, you wasn't going to make an A or a B. And my parents did not like C's. I got a lot of C's in conduct when I was growing up, and that did not turn out well at my house. The next probably influential person that really affected the direction of my life was Clay Moore. And this is somebody I haven't touched with in a long time, but he was the youth minister at our family church. And he was really responsible for me seeking out a closer walk with God and with my faith. And he did it in such a way, Kevin, that it was cool. And, you know, I'm a 16, 17, 18-year-old teenager, and Clay he wore his faith out there in front of everybody. And he was a young man, like 24. And that had a lasting impression on me. Then I moved on to much further along in my career, and I'm skipping a lot of names and a lot of things that came to mind, but I'm gonna go to Dr. Joe Paul. Okay. He is now the head guy at the University of Southern Mississippi, where he spent his career. But I hired Dr. Joe Paul as a personal coach. And I was a younger man at the time, around 40, and I had spent my career, I've got a very competitive nature, and I was always wanting to compete. I always wanted to win. And if you said, Joey, we need to get this done, I was going to get it done regardless of who I ran through or over. And I was busy collecting stars. And what I hadn't realized is that in leadership, if you're going to truly be a leader, that we have to go from, you graduate from collecting stars, your job is to give the stars away. And Joe Paul is really the first individual that held a mirror up for me and helped me see that I needed to give stars away, that it didn't need to be about Joey, that I needed to lead with significance. And again, the name of my book. So I got to give him a lot of credit. And then the last one that I'll bring up at this point is Dr. Hugh Parker, from the business perspective. Dr. Hugh Parker was the managing partner of Horn before I became the managing partner of Horn. Okay. And what I can tell you about what Dr. Parker taught me was the power of, help me understand, Kevin, what you just said. Help me understand why you have that opinion. Help me understand why you feel that way. In other words, he really wanted to understand what my beliefs and assumptions were. He taught me how to be open-minded. In other words, he was testing his beliefs and assumptions by understanding mine better. And he was also removing my defensiveness for me being defensive if he had a different opinion. Yeah. Because I knew he had asked me pretty thoroughly. A lot of times when it first started, I didn't really know why I felt that way. And so he got me thinking deeper. Why am I just assuming that? You know, we show up a lot of times in front of our team. We're just making assumptions. And I love the the saying from Mark Twain, it's not the things we don't know that gets us in trouble. It's the things we know for sure that just ain't so.
Yeah.
That's the ones that get us in trouble.
Yeah.
And so we all carry that suitcase around, by the way. Our brains are wired to make us feel good about where we sit today. And a lot of those assumptions and beliefs are not really true.
Yeah.
So that's Dr. Hugh Parker. He was the last one on the business side. And then I'd be very remiss if I didn't say my wife, Kathy, who we call CC. If you follow my Be Better blog, it comes out every week. JoeyHavens.com. You can sign up for it. It'll come right to you. I post it on LinkedIn and social media. But CC, as the family calls her, has really been, even though that's a personal relationship, I believe that when you have strong personal relationships at home, it makes you a better person at work. And sometimes when I would come home and I would vent about this person or that person, she would help me peel that onion back to maybe look at it in a different light. She was always and still is that person that says, hey, you can do this. You can make this happen. So CC has been extremely instrumental in me being that turtle on the fence post.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. You have, this is one of the reasons I love hosting this podcast, Joey, because unlike a test at school, this podcast, you get the questions in advance and you know what the topic's going to be on, and you get the opportunity to think about this. And like you shared, it's like, wow, Kevin, you giving me that question really caused me to just take pause and really think about these people that have been instrumental. And man, I need to show them a little more appreciation, let them know what I feel about them. And what's kind of cool is that we just did that. And so I'm just going to plant this seed for you, Joe. I will make sure that we get you the recording of this
Awesome.
quickly in case you do decide that you want to share it with any of the folks that you talked about today.
And I do want to.
I can tell you from personal experience, and that there's not a person on the face of this earth that gets too much appreciation. We all want more appreciation.
Amen.
And so, well, okay, so you have mentioned a number of people here. And so this is one of my favorite questions to ask because it really allows us just to dig a little bit deeper and uncover some more cool stuff. So if you look at, your life over the years and the relationships with the people that you mentioned, I'm sure you come up with lots of examples, but I want you to just think of one that would have to do with any one of these relationships that you've talked about, but an experience where you got to make a really big impact. And hands down, that would have never happened if not for the relationship you had with whichever of these people that you talked about.
Well, I think the one that just is rapid fire. I'm looking down that list and thinking through them, and it goes to my personal beliefs that we're called to serve others. We're called to love our neighbor and to profess our faith. And I would say Clay Moore, who is oddly the person on the list that I've had the least contact with in the last 25 years. And it's really odd also, you know, God works this way. I talk about coincidences in the book, from chapter to chapter. There's always a coincidence. God gets us back on the right path. My parents ran into Clay not long ago, and the first question he asked was, "How's Joey doing?" And that's just something they just shared with me in the last couple of weeks. Then you send me this question. And so I've got a feeling, Kevin, that not only do I need to make sure he hears our podcast, but I need to reach out and express to Clay, you know, what an impact he had on my life. Because if you think about a career that, man, I have been blessed way beyond anything I deserved. And again, had so many people help me throughout that process. At the core of it, and at the core of leading with significance, making the choice. We have two choices in life. We can chase success, which I was doing at one point. It's all about more, more, more. It's more power, more control, more money, more whatever. And it never ends. You never win that race, by the way. When you get to one little mountaintop, you're looking at the next one, you want a little more. It's
right.
and it brings moments of pleasure. But when you on that journey chasing success, you never really have any true joy, lasting happiness. Not that real joy that stays in your heart, gives you some peace about some things. So the other choice we can make is a life of significance. And that's one where we choose to help those around us, to elevate them, to make sure that what we're doing, just like the relationships you're asking about, are we having a positive impact on the people that our lives are touching? And that's what leading with significance means, is that we're going to make those choices that first help others. And, you know, again, I think it's biblical, but what happens is that it comes back to you 1,000 times over. And if you live and lead with significance, success always follows. But if you chase success, you do not get significance. And that's a big difference at the end of life, and how you feel about yourself and how people and relationships feel about you.
Yeah. Wow, Joey, that is really powerful. And I normally wouldn't talk about this on the recording of this podcast, but I just feel led to, because I've been doing what I do for a while and kind of playing this matchmaker connector for entrepreneurs, if you will. And I have facilitated some pretty amazing relationships over the years, relationships that have impacted millions of people. And I feel good about that. But I'm also at this point now where I think God's talking to me. And like what you just shared, because if I look at how this whole thing right here transpired, it came because I'm on Andrew's email list. And then I saw you featured in one of his weekly emails, and I reached out to you, and you or somebody on your team responded and said, yeah, we'd like to do that interview. And here we are now having this conversation. And then having this experience with Clay from years ago, that now just 2 weeks ago, your parents run into him and have a conversation at the same exact time that you and I are connecting. That leads to this conversation, that leads to you just thinking about Clay. And what I will tell you that I have had, just especially in the last 6 to 8 months, I am having more and more experiences like this, where God is kind of, and if for those of you that don't want to use the word God, great, use the word universe, whatever, but that we are these vessels, and the better steward that we are of what we've been given and what we've been entrusted with, the more that we will be given and entrusted with to be a steward of. And I 100% believe that that is what's going on, because too much stuff is happening where there is no way that I personally could have choreographed it or caused that to happen. That like with this, I am just a vessel that is part to have an impact on you, because to make sure you get that message that, Joey, you're supposed to get back in touch with this guy.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what this is. This is about so much more than a doggone interview. And
Right. I mean, you have the new relationship you and I have has stirred something in my heart that I know I need to take care of, that God's asking me. Maybe Clay needs a word of affirmation right now. Maybe he needs to know that his ministry when he was a young man made a difference. Shame on me for not really reflecting. It took your question. And I'll tell you another side of your question that's very interesting to me is I also realized this, because when I wrote this book and spent a year, you do a lot of reflecting as you write a book. I also realized this about your question. And this is my personal belief, but God has his hands on us. And I believe if he hadn't put Miss Abson, Miss Trawick, or if Clay hadn't stepped up, he would have had somebody to step up. So I don't totally believe in coincidences. And the last one I'll tell you about is I was struggling with writing this book. I thought I'd write it when I was retired. And God wouldn't give me any peace about it. I mean, I'd go to bed, it'd be on my brain. I'd wake up in the morning. I said, look, I'm going to do this. I'm just not going to do it right now. And a friend, a high school friend that I haven't, been real close to, but in the last few years, we've gotten close. Out of the blue, he didn't know anything about the book or me thinking about writing a book. He sent me a package, and I opened this package and had a note in it. It was his name's Stacy, and he said, Joey, I got no idea why I just sent you this, but God put it on my heart. It has come up several times, and so I don't know what it means, but I'm sending it to you. So I opened the box up, and inside was a handcrafted pen. Well, I got to work on the outline that afternoon.
Yeah. Like I said, I have had a lot of experiences in the last few months that, I mean, it's just like, I'm like you, Joey, that there is no coincidence. My buddy Sean Stevenson, he was such a great guy. He passed away a few years ago, but he made a comment to me years ago, probably 7-8 years ago. He's like, Kevin, he's like, nothing ever happens to me. Everything is happening for me and through me. And he just believed that with every core of his being. And I told him, I said, you know what, Sean? I said, I'm going to take that and I'm going to make that mine. And I know, it's not always an easy thing to do, to like get a situation and say, okay, this is happening for me or through me or what have you. But what it does if we're going to take that and own that, we have to look at all these situations and be like, well, how is this an example of this is happening for me? And the thing is when we do ask ourselves a question, our mind will come up with the answer. We will come up with the answer. I mean, that's how our subconscious mind works. That's why when I was talking about that certain entrepreneur before we started recording, I'm like, what's their name? What's their name? And it came to me. Well, that was the subconscious mind going through the files and finding the answer, And so when we ask a question, we can expect that we will come up with the answer. And so I've just trained myself to do that over the years. And like I said, not always easy, but extremely beneficial.
Very powerful. I love that, Kevin.
Yeah. And so
that's the first time I heard that. That's strong.
Well, I have been eternally grateful to Sean and the role that young man held in my life. I remember back in 2010, he had somebody he wanted to introduce me to, and he insisted that I fly to Santa Monica with him to meet this individual. And it was like the week before my daughter was to be born. And my wife is like, boy, you better hope this baby's not born when you and Sean are in California. and we lucked out and everything worked out good. I will not forget that trip. And Sean's parents were there too. And in fact, Sean's parents are still alive to this day. And that is just one of the fond memories I have of that guy. But yes, he has had a profound impact on my life as well, and continues to, even though he's no longer with us on this earth. And well, Joey, I for anybody listening to this that is just like, wow, Kevin, I really like Joey. I appreciate him. I love the way he shows up. How can they find out more about the work that you're doing, about the book, any of that, Joey?
Thank you, Kevin. I've got a website, joeyhavens.com.
Okay.
And you can go there and find out all about me. You can email me at joey.havens. Joey@joeyhavens.com, and email me there. You can email me at joey.havens@horn.com. I'm out on all the social media platforms, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram. And right now, Amazon has the book for pre-orders. It has been identified as #1 new release in a number of categories. And
nice.
So I'm very excited about that. It'll be out June the 6th. It'll be in a number of retail outlets. You may even see it in the airport. I know a couple of the airport booksellers have picked the book up, so it will be in the airport there when you walk by sometimes. So we're very excited about that. And it'll have a Kindle version and a audio version.
Okay. Very good. Very good. Well, Joey, any last thing you feel led to share before we call this a wrap?
Well, in the spirit of people and building great cultures, I'm going to say be intentional and be bold.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, Joey, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation. And like I shared, one of the big things is I want, right from the get-go, I wanted to be able to use this podcast to inspire other entrepreneurs, other founders, other CEOs to place an intentional focus on creating more real, meaningful, rewarding, and profitable relationships in their own lives. And we have definitely delivered on that today, thanks to you, Joey. And I am incredibly appreciative of you for the role that you played in that. And I'm just really glad you and I got to meet and have this conversation today. So thank you. Thank you.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And I'm so grateful and so thankful you asked me that question. Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate what you're doing.
Absolutely.